The thing that is interesting about the Yamaha that I saw, and if you go look at photos of it, good thing we have a bike right here.
Right.
When you look at the frame, if you look up close, there's tiny little holes drilled. And then around the swing arm pivot, the main spar down here, holes drilled. They're drilled and tapped. And what they do is they use those and they can bolt on plates of aluminum
to change the stiffness of the frame. Interesting.
And I think that's fascinating that it is clearly a guinea pig, this frame, right? They're clearly trying to see what works and what doesn't. And they've got these holes drilled in it so they can take plates of different thicknesses and different shapes and different positions or whatever and bolt them to the frame and test it and take them off and try a different one and take it off and simulate what would it be like if we manufactured the frame differently with different aluminum or different
thicknesses, the extrusion technologies that they can do.
It reminds me of, and if you go back and look at old MotoGP Suzuki was very interesting. They did a few things with their frame that I always thought was really fascinating. If you looked at their frames, occasionally you would see ones where the main aluminum spar, it was still an aluminum frame, but it had carbon on it.
Right.
And it looked from the outside like, oh, it's carbon wrap for like protection, which is not uncommon even in street bikes. Guys buy carbon covers. These were not just to protect from damage. These were thick. The carbon would be a couple millimeters thick on the sides in different positions. And it was not just like stuck on, it was bonded.
Right.
With like industrial adhesive.
Yeah.
Which is as good as bolting or welding, frankly.
Sure.
Industrial adhesives are crazy.
An assembly, not a part.
But they would do that to the frame to get different behaviors out of the frame more quickly. And so they'd bond stuff to it. The other thing that they did, these, and you can kind of see them on your bike, these spars here that are the engine mounts, the hangers. If you look at Yamaha's and some other brands, this is really exaggerated how long and thin these are.
Right.
To let the engine and the frame have a little bit more separation.
Because you want flex when you're on the side of the tire. Exactly. If you have something that's too stiff, this is a problem with a lot of the late 90s, early 2000s bikes. They were too stiff and it would actually compromise grip from the tire because as odd as it sounds, you want your frame to have some degree of flex in it.
So the interesting thing Suzuki did is the spar from the main spar of the frame down to the engine hanger, I should say, down to the engine mount, was carbon fiber.
Wow.
And it was a carbon, almost like a blade structure. So it had this kind of outward curve that melted, it kind of looked like it melded into the bodywork.
That's super cool.
They would even decal it and paint it so it looked like bodywork, but it's actually the spar of the...
That is crazy cool.
And so then those were bolted to the aluminum frame and they could swap them out. So they could get different behaviors. I love that stuff about Suzuki. Did all kinds of kind of quirky little things.
I sure
like that.
am sad they left the game, but that is super cool. Now, with your job, your for real job, you have machines at your disposal that allow you to 3D print aluminum. Is that right? So I'm sure they have to be using some of that technology here where as they print the frame, they can make it thicker here and thinner here and maybe put little cross members and stuff like that.
Yeah, you definitely could. I'm not aware of any of the brands that are fully 3D printing a frame at this point. But some of the new technologies, in theory, you absolutely could 3D print a frame. I've seen parts that are taller than I am that are a single 3D print metal.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, some of the printers now are huge in scale, and they're printing like aerospace parts,
So they're strong enough because you would wonder that, like versus a forging or a casting. Casting is always, you have problems with inclusions or little pockets of air throughout the frame. That's always the problem with casting. Forging, where it's put under intense pressure. But I've always wondered with printing 3D, like does each print create a weak spot between each layer? I don't know exactly how you obviously do.
Yeah.
You know more than I do.
In general, when you do printing with the newer technologies now with the lasers, you're getting like a 98% solid part.
Oh, okay. So that's pretty good.
Nearest makes no difference kind of thing. And very, very consistent behavior. So these parts can get, non-destructive inspection. They can do x-rays and other ways of examining the metal itself to see if there's any delaminations or layers that didn't bond correctly. In general, a lot of these companies are getting really, really good with the material and with the process. That said, there are absolutely 3D printed parts all over the bike. I don't know if I've seen one where the frame is 3D printed yet.
Oh, it's interesting to think about, though, because you could control so much about the behavior of a piece. And if they're using it in aerospace, for sure, you got to be thinking there.
There was Kenny Roberts. Remember when Kenny Roberts had a team and they had their own chassis, but they used Honda engines?
Yep.
He had gone to some... And I'm maybe somebody can look up in the actual history of this. My memory of it anyway is that they had gone to a company who was basically doing, Kenny Roberts' team, when they were using the Honda engines with their own chassis, they had gone to a company that was doing some version of like a wire EDM process where you'd start with a solid block of aluminum for the frame, and they were using wire EDM to effectively erode the inside of the frame away in a really precise, engineered way. Again, but under that same guise of trying to get the characteristics that they're after. If you look at Yamaha frames, and I think this is always fascinating, if you look at Yamaha frames, there's certain areas of the main spar. When you look at it, if you look at it, it's painted. They always paint their frames black. But when you look at them, it almost looks like wrinkled paper slightly.
Right.
That's because there are certain parts of that frame that are damn near paper thin.
Oh, seriously?
Really, really thin. They almost look wavy. That's how thin the metal is in some areas.
Oh my gosh.
But they know where they're doing it. And so they'll do it like around the area where the engine hanger is. And that engine hanger, whereas yours on this bike, for those on Spotify or Apple, I'm sorry you can't see this, but where yours has this cast piece that's welded on, this big triangle, this would all be one kind of covered sheet of aluminum almost on theirs.
Right.
But it is paper thin for part of it as it comes down to the hanger. So, and again, all these things are some engineer and test rider have figured out like, hey, that feels better. I can corner better. I can do whatever better when they come up with these designs. But it is fascinating to watch how they do it.